Yeah, Disney is conducting a post-mortem on Snow White because I guess they were shocked at its failure in the box office so far. You can even see the proof posted by Rachel Zegler herself in an Instagram video. She showed up to a movie theater to watch Snow White in full once again herself, and you can see the rest of the theater is just vacant. It's empty.
She's kind of playing it off like, this is so kitsch. This is so funny. But really, like, I think they tried to, like, zoom in and hide the fact that the theater was barren.
Right. Ain't nobody there. Stop screaming.
Nobody around. Nobody there. I suppose theoretically there could be some people in the back.
She's cheering for herself?
She cheered for her own name.
I mean, that's all you have, really. You know? This is her one consolation. And now, Variety journalist Tatiana Siegel has published a long-form investigative report as to what went on between Disney and Rachel Zegler and how heated this war became behind the scenes while she was trashing the movie, making the press tour a nightmare for them, constantly mouthing off on social media. How was Disney trying to fight back against that, and why didn't they put the kibosh on it?
It's Gina Carano's fault, apparently.
It is Gina Carano's fault, but it's, I would also like to say it's hugely Disney's fault, and you will see how she bullied them when we get into the details. So first off, first incident they mention here, August 12th, 2024. 3 days after Rachel Zegler introduced the first official trailer for Snow White at D23 last year, she thanked supporters in a post on X for getting it to 120 million views in 24 hours. 1 minute later, she added an additional tweet to the same thread saying, "Always remember Free Palestine."
I love that, like, you did it right, and then you couldn't help yourself that you had to go back. I don't know what I would have found funnier. I don't know what I would have found funnier. That or editing the post.
Yeah, that would be even worse.
That would have been funnier.
Yeah. So many inside the Disney studio expressed shock that Zegler would co-mingle the promotion of its 270 million tentpole with any political statements. A Disney executive raised these concerns with Zegler's team, and Snow White's producer, Mark Platt, flew to New York City to speak directly with Rachel Zegler about her post. It got that serious? So how is anyone shocked? We're talking about something that happened in August 2024. We are well into promotion and production for this movie. You've seen the kind of person Rachel Zegler is. This shouldn't be shocking anymore.
I want you to think of something like this. So back in the day, if somebody wanted to cause a scene before the advent of the smartphone, to cause these types of problems before the advent of social media, it would be akin to an actor walking out into Times Square and shouting something crazy that got them in trouble. Now, every celebrity at every level of the Hollywood production process carries around a nuclear weapon in their pocket, and these companies don't have any, like, guidelines in place to stop them. The first thing you should be doing is you say, look, you're allowed to have whatever opinions you want, but this is a $200 million production. We need to make a lot of money to make this viable. If you agree with our feminist messaging that we're trying to get out in this film, then you have to agree to certain stipulations that will limit your speech in the meantime. If you do not agree to that, that is fine. You can move on with your life. We don't need to hire you to do that. Okay? It's not a limit of free speech from the government. It's just common sense from these companies, because nobody would have expected when Snow White, or let's say, what's a more recent movie that came out? Beauty and the Beast. What if this was prior to the age of the cell phone and Emma Watson goes out into Times Square and yells something super controversial to everyone, right? Mm-hmm. No, now every actor has the ability to screw up $100 million productions that require people to take red-eye flights to go and try and fix. Right. You're carrying around a WMD in your pocket and nobody's doing anything about it.
So Mark Platt, the Snow White producer, flew to New York to speak to Rachel Zegler about this at the last minute. And it turned out that Zegler stood her ground. She refused to delete the post.
I mean,
I guess she has bigger balls than the producer of a $270 million movie, so, like, go you.
Mm-hmm.
They then saw a reported spike in death threats toward her Israeli co-star in the movie, Gal Gadot, and Disney then had to pay for her additional security in response. And one insider says Rachel didn't understand the repercussions of her actions as far as what it meant for the film, for Gal Gadot, for anyone. And they apparently weren't able to communicate it to her. 3 months later, after Trump's election victory, Rachel takes to Instagram and she says F Donald Trump. She says that she hopes Trump supporters never know peace. And again, this led to another confrontation between Rachel Zegler and the producer, Mark Platt. Disney had
guys, refresh your screens if you're having problems.
Are we having an issue with the stream?
Refresh.
Is the stream okay?
Seems fine now.
Okay. After yet another confrontation with Mark Platt, Disney then decided to hire a social media guru who would be responsible for vetting all of Rachel Zegler's social media posts prior to Snow White's release. And not even that was good enough.
Yeah.
So now that Snow White is confirmed to have flopped at the box office, Disney executives are going back and trying to evaluate what went wrong. And they say in this Variety piece, the Disney-Zegler standoffs underscore the challenge Hollywood studios face as they attempt to rein in stars who court controversy on social media.
Look, it's not controversy. It's progressive ideology, okay? And you have courted this yourself by promoting these causes. We're going to talk about it tomorrow with Aiden, but Disney shareholders just roundly rejected the push for to remove DEI from their hiring policies. It's not going anywhere at these companies. Yeah. And if you're going to hire activists, you have to be aware of what baggage comes with hiring activists. Fine. You want to do that? Fine. Your business. Doesn't mean they can't act. Most people are saying Rachel Zegler was the best part of this movie. You've shot yourself in the foot by taking the best part of this movie and connecting it with something that is roundly being rejected by everyone.
This is what I think is sinister about this Variety piece written by Tatiana Siegel. They are scapegoating Rachel Zegler for a problem Disney had before hiring Rachel Zegler. Simply put. And I think that it's mainly because, honestly, they don't like Rachel Zegler's views about Palestine. Because if this controversy had just boiled down to her comments about feminism or about race or any other issue that's on the left, there would have been not a peep against her.
No,
I swear
what we would be hearing now is about how it's our fault that the movie failed, but we're not getting that.
If it weren't for her statements about Palestine, the journalists would still be running cover for her, but because she's outspoken about Palestine and so many of these journalists are Jewish, so many of these executives at Disney or other studios are Jewish and feel strongly about this issue, probably personally identify as Zionists, they have turned their backs on her. I'm not trying to make a value judgment either way. I don't really care. But I'm just saying, if she had only been outspoken about other issues like shitting on Trump supporters, if she had only said that the prince is a stalker, etc., no one would be throwing her under the bus the way they're doing now. And this piece is also noticeably sympathetic to Gal Gadot for her political statements, specifically regarding Israel and Gaza, because Gal Gadot is Israeli and she is openly pro-Israel, and also a former IDF soldier. So they also note here that Rachel Zegler had already strained nerves when she complained on social media that she wasn't invited to the Oscars in 2022. At that time, she had just begun production on Snow White, and this was with Sean Bailey, the then president of Walt Disney Studios Motion Picture Production. He declined to cut her loose in order for her to attend the Oscars. She assumed it was a personal dig instead of an executive decision on her schedule. But after she aired her grievance publicly, the Academy provided her with an invite, even though she wasn't nominated for West Side Story, which was nominated for Best Picture. Another film from Disney, by the way, which slipped my mind. And then directly after that is when the infamous D23 clips came out and went viral. Those were the crux of the issue, which was completely glossed over in the Variety piece and all other coverage about this issue. Disney became increasingly loath to weigh in on anyone's speech after getting sued by Gina Carano last year, funded by Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. And she was suing, basically alleging that they were firing her for speaking out on hot button issues. Obviously, Rachel Zegler did not face the same consequences. But yeah, then they end the piece talking about the alleged feud between Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, saying there's apparently no bad blood between the leads, despite press reports to the contrary. The actresses got along well during production, and things only got awkward during the run-up to release. Rachel Zegler, I hadn't heard about this. Rachel Zegler referred to Gal Gadot as a professional pageant queen in one Instagram reply that followed their joint appearance at the Oscars, which was considered dismissive.
This already puts Gadot in higher standing, given the fact that, you know, you can say that she's given a pass for her willingness to talk about, you know, October 7th in the run-up to this movie, but she's not bad-mouthing her co-star. Okay.
Zegler, you mean? Or
no, Gadot is not bad-mouthing her co-star, right?
Okay.
Okay,
yeah.
right? And also the other thing that happened was Rachel Zegler made like a carousel post thanking everybody for Snow White with pictures, and she conspicuously left Gal off that carousel post. So say what you want, but Gal Gadot is infinitely better media trained. And of course has the backing of the media because they support her and they support her causes, but comes across as more likable. But it should not be understated that there are likely plenty of viewers who, if we're supposed to operate under the premise that the off-film behavior of both of these actors affected the box office, that there are people who ignored going to this movie because of Gal Gadot and her connections to Israel, as much as there are people who didn't go because of what Rachel Zegler said about Palestine. Maybe not the same amount, and certainly she caused less problems, but the ones who don't like Gal Gadot are going to be just as vocal online.
Mm-hmm. They brought up other issues that probably contributed to the failure of Snow White at the box office. And, you know, its run isn't over yet. We could be surprised. Unlikely, though. Including COVID, and they included the strikes, and there was apparently a fire on the set, which is very Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
And, you know, a few other issues. The fact that Disney live-action remakes had already been struggling before this one ever came out or was in production. And that's what I think they're dancing around. I think that Disney realizes this is a terrible look, and they want Rachel Zegler to now be the villain of the story rather than taking accountability for the ways they were failing as a company well before she was ever in the picture.
And I think you're right. I think that if it wasn't for their support of Gal Gadot's causes, that the media response right now would be blaming you.
Yeah, exactly.
You, the audience who didn't go see it. They would say, we have a man problem. We have a racism problem.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking at some of the responses here. First off, from Polymath on X, I feel bad for Rachel Zegler, who doesn't deserve this. She was 20 years old when they cast her. She has median left political views.
No.
Really?
No.
Influenced by her Hollywood friends and handlers, but is too young to know she should not talk about that to the press.
Okay. She was 20 years old, you sick fuck. Like,
okay.
Either you're an adult capable of signing a multi-million-dollar contract and all which that entails, or you're not. Is she an adult or not?
I have seen girls in their early 20s.
How old is Halle Bailey?
Of doing some crazy shit.
How old is Halle Bailey?
Every time you see people responding like, well, they just haven't had enough time to learn. And I'm like, excuse me, like I'm 22, 23, whatever. And I would never think to do what that person did.
How old is Halle Bailey? Because she certainly handled it just fine.
They're about the same age. It doesn't really matter. It's not that big of a difference. She's also Gen Z as far as I know. But yeah, then they say she has a gorgeous voice, but spent the majority of her career being defined by this corporate boondoggle. Nothing she could have done would have fixed this disaster. And now a bunch of cowardly, flailing middle manager studio PR hacks are trying to throw this young woman under the bus.
I do believe they are throwing
Disgraceful.
her. I do think they are throwing her under the bus, but saying that she's not culpable is insane.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want anyone to misread what I'm saying. Obviously, Rachel Zegler is a nightmare, and I'm sure she's, like most Gen Z who are chronically online in this way, she completely dehumanizes people who disagree with her. She does probably think, despite having spent time with Gal Gadot face to face, that Gal Gadot is just an evil person. She's just not. She's like a non-entity
And
because she
remember-
disagrees with, the Palestinian cause.
If you are a Trump supporter, she hopes that you never know peace in your life.
Yeah. Speaking of which, she reminds me of Melissa Barrera, who was cut from Scream 7 for her outspoken pro-Palestine views. She called out Tatiana Siegel, the author of the Variety piece, for publishing critical articles about both her and Rachel Zegler. Obviously, these are two young actresses who are very outspokenly pro-Palestine. Tatiana Siegel herself is Jewish, and I would presume not pro-Palestine.
Yes.
In fact, probably pro-Israel. So I'm just pointing out the bias on both sides here. Here's another interesting little detail. Mark Platt, the producer of Snow White I mentioned earlier, has a son named Jonah Platt, who is very public on social media, has a podcast. He literally is the host of the Being Jewish podcast. Okay.
I'm going to start.
Calls himself a Jewish advocate.
I'm going to be starting the Being Polish podcast.
Yeah, this is a thing now.
The Being Croatian podcast.
So, yeah, he's listing himself as an actor, director, all these things, but first and foremost, he is a Jewish advocate. So this is why he cares about this issue, and his father, Mark Platt, as well. So someone went to Jonah Platt's Instagram and mentioned Mark Platt, his father, saying, "Your dad flew to NYC to reprimand a young actress. Any words on this? Because that's creepy as hell and uncalled for. People have the right to free speech. No? Shame on your father."
When you are part of a multi-million-dollar production that is going to net you millions of dollars in profit, it will come with concessions that need to be made when you are a public-facing member of a conglomerate like Disney. You're going to be expected to hold yourself to a certain... You're going to be expected to hold yourself to a certain level of professional standards, regardless of young. She wasn't young. She was an adult.
Creepy, though? That's like an insane way to phrase that.
And the thing is you can't even make the argument to the contrary because they fired Gina Carano for her free speech.
Okay, what would have been creepy? It would have been creepy if Mark Platt, unannounced, showed up to Rachel Zegler's personal home residence. Okay, that would have been creepy. But this was a planned meeting, a business meeting that he flew to make it happen. I mean, that's not...
The fact that he had to hop on a flight to go do it should tell you how serious it is.
So Jonah Platt, Mark Platt's son, responded to this criticism on Instagram saying, "You really want to do this? Yeah. My dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand..."
Okay, that's kind of...
He's already casting his dad as a victim.
That is a bit ridiculous,
To reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie for which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract to get paid and do publicity for. This is called adult responsibility and accountability, and her actions clearly hurt the film's box office. Free speech does not mean you're allowed to say whatever you want in your private employment without repercussions. Tens of thousands of people worked on that film, and she hijacked the conversation for her own immature desires at the risk of all the colleagues and crew and blue-collar workers who depend on that movie to be successful. Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged.
He is ignoring the fact that there would be a bias going the other direction, clearly.
Mark Platt flew out because that was a comment about Palestine. I stand by that.
He is right. He is also wrong at the same time.
So imagine this scenario. Instead, Rachel Zegler posts the Snow White trailer thanking everyone for their support. She adds a reply in the thread and says, "By the way, she's still a feminist girl boss who doesn't need a prince. Haha. F you trolls." Would Mark Platt have flown out to talk to her about that? No, I don't think so. No, even though that would have gotten immense amounts of backlash
if it
in
would have
comparison.
been about the race, saying, "Oh, well, Snow White isn't
Snow White
anymore.
is Snow Brown, so F you, racist trolls.
No flight.
No flight.
No flight.
Okay?
Maybe a phone, maybe a Zoom call.
Like, let's just be honest about that.
Yeah.
Okay? And the biases that exist in a Hollywood studio. And, you know, the bias that exists in someone who hosts something literally called the Being Jewish podcast. So I'm not going to say that I fully agree with his statement, but there are also some really unhinged people going and flooding his comment sections at the moment because he defended his dad, Mark. Blaming your father's failure on Rachel is such a sad take.
Why was it his failure?
They're saying Mark Platt,
as an executive producer, I guess,
producer, is responsible for the film's failure in a way that Rachel isn't.
I mean, what about the director, the star?
Wait, did your dad also speak to Gal Gadot after her speech at ADL this month? That was a significantly greater insertion of personal politics into the film's promotion, than the two rather tame words Zegler used 7 months ago.
Yes, but the problem is she added it to an official promotion of the movie, whereas Gadot was at a separate
event.
Yeah. A separate event that was not connected to the film at all.
I'm willing to acknowledge those differences.
But
I fully understand that.
I don't know if Zegler would have gotten a free pass if she had gone to a Free Palestine rally and spoken.
Your problem is when Rachel Zegler is being a raging feminist. Your problem is really not when Rachel Zegler is talking about Palestine.
No.
If we're talking about public perception and what people actually give an F about and what will make them decide to boycott or not boycott.
The normies are not ditching
The normies don't care.
Correct.
The normies do not care about Palestine. Everyone in Hollywood is like crazy about this issue. Normies do not care. They don't.
They care that you called the prince a stalker.
They care that, yes, that you're trashing the 1937 film, that you race swapped the main character, and that you're an annoying feminist scumbag.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.